Think about the last time a story moved you. Maybe it was a movie, a book, or even a story shared by someone you know. Stories have the unique ability to resonate with us deeply, to make us feel and remember. For brands, this resonance can translate into a strong connection with customers, resulting in loyalty and advocacy. Today, I'll share the 4 essential stories every brand needs. Welcome to Brand for Good, the show for purpose-driven leaders who want to build timeless brands and create sustainable impact. I'm Lorraine Sugart, former PR and marketing executive turned founder of the disruptive agency Prosper for Purpose. I've worked with some of the world's most beloved brands, and I'm here to help you elevate your brand identity, visibility, influence, and impact. Are you ready to brand for good? Let's go. Hello, friends, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Brand for Good, the podcast where today we will explore the power of storytelling in building impactful brands. Specifically, we're going to talk about the 4 essential brand stories that I believe every impact-driven brand needs to stand out in the market. I'll also talk a bit about why these stories matter, how to use them effectively, and I'll share some inspiring examples of brand stories. Before we jump into the types of brand stories, let me just take a minute to help you understand why they matter. So I've talked about stories a few other times on the podcast about the fact that they help us learn and remember more than any other kind of communication. They connect with us on a human level. They evoke emotions, they build trust, and for brands, they help make the brand memorable. So why is this important to you in a crowded market? And let's just be real, every market is crowded right now. A compelling story can be the differentiator that sets your brand apart. It's not just about selling your product or service. It's about creating a meaningful connection with your audience so that they're more likely to believe in you before they start working with you. And then after they work with you throughout your process and after, they're more likely to have a positive feeling about their experience with your business. So let's explore what I consider to be the 4 essential brand stories that will help your brand elevate in the market. The first one we've all heard of before, it's the origin story. So the origin story is typically found on the About page of your website, and it talks about where it all began. It is the who and the why behind your brand. So this story should explain how your company started, who founded it, and what motivated them or you to start the business. It's a chance to share a little bit of your backstory, what you care about, challenges that you found typically before starting your company, and the journey that led to the creation of your brand. So an example here, you know I love my examples, is Ben & Jerry's. So the story goes that Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield, who were childhood friends, took a $5 correspondence course in ice cream making and opened their first ice cream scoop shop in a renovated gas station in Burlington, Vermont. Their commitment to social and environmental causes has been a cornerstone of their brand ever since. So when you think of Ben & Jerry's, sure, you think of their great brand names, their delicious ice cream, but you also think about the causes that they have stood for. So this origin story, in this case, Ben & Jerry story, not only highlights their entrepreneurial spirit, but also their dedication to making a positive impact, which has endeared them to customers around the world. So origin story is number 1. Number 2 is your signature story. And so I like to think of this and hold it somewhat loosely. Your signature story is typically an abbreviated yet impactful version of your origin story. It's designed to be memorable, relatable, or inspiring. So either someone's going to say, "Oh, I totally get that. I feel that way." Or it's going to inspire them in some way that even if you weren't where they are now, that they say, "This is a solution that I need." And so this story is perfect for bios, introductions, if you're being interviewed or you're speaking on stages, any situation where you need to quickly convey what your brand is all about is an example of your signature story. So here is an example in this story. And I'm using this, and I can never say Yvonne's Chenard's last name correctly, I don't think, but his signature story, Patagonia's signature story, often highlights their founder's love for the outdoors and the commitment to environmental action. It's a story of a climber who wanted better gear and ended up creating a company dedicated to producing sustainable products. Now, in this case, it's a very concise yet powerful story that captures the essence of Patagonia's purpose and mission and values, making it easy for people to understand and remember what the brand stands for. So, story 3 now is what I like to call the transformation story. The transformation story focuses on your proprietary product or your proprietary method and how it helps your customer. This story should showcase the impact your brand has had on people's lives and highlight your unique selling proposition. So, told in its complete form, it could be a case of, let's just say, it is a safe product that you can use in your home. The transformation story could be about how someone in your house had chemical sensitivity and you formulated this cleaning solution that would make breathing easier for them. And since then, you've started this company so that other people could have access to this wonderful product. And you hear stories all the time about how people started to be able to breathe healthier in their home, and children with asthma were less triggered by things in their home, et cetera, et cetera. Now, you can also use as your transformation story actual customer testimonials. And this is what we see often, but there should be a basis for that. The core transformation story should be somewhere. Most of these stories, all of these stories should live in some way on your website, but we want to be really careful and intentional about also pulling out transformation stories. And so testimonials are a great way to do this. Now, let me backtrack for a minute and give you my example here. So, Warby Parker, their transformation story revolves around their mission to offer designer eyewear at a revolutionary price while also leading the way for socially conscious businesses. And so they share stories of customers who were able to afford the stylish glasses that they had been admiring for the very first time and the profound impact it had on their confidence in daily life. So basically, taking what was perceived as a luxury product and making it accessible to more people while also doing good and having positive impact in the world. So these stories of personal transformation that Warby Parker shares not only highlight the benefits of their products, but also reinforces their commitment to accessibility and social good. All right, now the fourth category here is your personal story, or if you're running a large company, I call them personal stories. So personal stories are about the key people behind your brand, which are the key people behind your business. You all know, you've been listening to me for long enough, that I use brand and business interchangeably at times, but when I really need to say brand, you will know your brand is your reputation in the market, and that's what we're all about, building brands for good. Anyway, back to the story. If a founder or leader is the face of the organization, these stories are typically about them. So if you're the face of your company, you may have a couple people working with you, but you're the front person. You're the one that delivers the goods. You're the one that does all the public speaking. Then you are going to have a series, one core, but a series of personal stories about you. If you have a team and you're sharing let's just say the limelight, the stage with your team, then each member should have a personal story. And this really is helpful because it adds depth and further connection to your brand. You can use your brand narrative about the people who make up your key team because each of the people on your team joined for a different reason. They probably lead a different area of your business. And the people reading those, the people that really want to do a deep dive, and I'm one of those, I like to read if a company has key officers or people that are a key part of their team. I look at those bios. And so, maybe the founder's story doesn't resonate with everyone, but if you have a key team and you're telling their stories as well, someone will say, oh, wow, I don't necessarily relate to Joe, the founder, but I really relate to Kristen. So think about that as well. These stories should be interesting, right? We don't just want any personal story, but really their intention is to showcase the experience, the passion of the members on your team and show how they also bring that to make your company better and stronger. So, an example of a good personal story is Tom's Shoes. So, they often share the personal story of their founder, Blake Mycoskie. I'm just throwing those names out there today, who was inspired to start the company after a trip to Argentina, where he saw lots of children without shoes. And this personal experience led to the creation of the one-for-one model, where for every pair of shoes sold, a pair is donated to a child in need. Blake's personal story here adds that layer of authenticity and emotional appeal to the Tom's brand, making it relatable and also inspiring to customers. What? Wait, you mean if I buy myself a pair of shoes that I really like or maybe really need, I'm also going to be buying a pair of shoes for a child in need? That's a no-brainer, right? If you're going to buy the shoes anyway, buy from a company that is donating a pair. So those are your 4 essential stories: the origin story, the signature story, the transformation story, and then your personal story or some personal stories for your team. And I want you to think about those. And I hope that in the next day or two, you'll take some time to consider which stories you already have and which ones you need to build. Once you create these stories, let's talk about how you can use them to build your brand. So, when you're writing these stories, here's a couple things to consider. First of all, they have to be authentic. You've seen other brand stories. Don't try to mimic someone else's story and just kind of make it your own. You want to spend some time, especially with your origin story and your personal story, thinking about the why behind the why behind the why. You've heard that. Go back 5 times, ask yourself why, and really get to the core of when did your urge that led you to start or lead your business, where'd that come from? You want these stories to be authentic and true to you and your brand. People can tell when a story is either fabricated, manipulated, or exaggerated. It just, you know this, it just doesn't land right. Next, you want to make sure that you're applying consistency across channels. So I talk about this all the time: clear, concise, compelling, and consistent. Be sure that your stories are consistent across all your brand touch points. And this means your website, your social media, your marketing materials, and even some of your different customer interactions. For example, onboarding. If you have a client and you're bringing them in, don't assume that they read your website. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Tell them your story, explain why you started your company, give them a little bit of information about you to kind of set the stage. Next is that you want to be brief and impactful. So while the origin story that is written for your website may be a full page narrative, your signature story might just be 3 sentences. So as you look at your origin story and you're thinking about, well, what's my signature story? I'm not going to go back and make sure that I touch on every point that's on my website origin story. I'm going to turn it into maybe a 3-sentence, compelling, impactful abbreviation of that story. You always want to tailor the length and detail of your stories to fit the context where they're being used. Number 4 here, the 4th tip is to engage emotionally. So we know that people want to form relationships and they want to like the companies that they're doing business with. So we do this by not being this man behind the curtain, but actually engaging with people and using our stories to evoke those emotions, whether it's inspiration, empathy, excitement. Emotional engagement is what really makes a story memorable. And then finally, be sure that you're using your unique voice. So we did a whole episode on brand voice. We want to make sure that your voice comes through in every story. If you're playful and then all of a sudden you put together a 3-sentence signature story that's just completely fact-based, it's going to sound weird to people. It's going to sound like someone else wrote it. So whatever your brand personality is, whatever your brand voice is, make sure that your stories sound like they come from your brand. Voice and personality needs to be consistent to build that trust. So remember here, the goal is to create a cohesive and compelling and clear narrative that resonates with your audience and reinforces your brand's identity so that you stick out in the market from everybody else that offers what you offer. So to wrap this up today, I want you to remember that brand stories are more than just another piece of your marketing. They're really the essence of what makes your brand unique and relatable. By crafting and sharing your origin story, your signature story, transformation story, and personal stories, you can create a powerful connection with your audience and stand out in your market. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Brand for Good. I want to say next week, before you go, we will be diving into actually writing website copy. I am taking you along with me as I am reevaluating every step of my brand as I get ready to launch my new website this fall. And I'm bringing you along with me so that you can learn as I'm reassessing and you can take the same things that I'm doing, look at your website and your brand positioning and all of those things and kind of reevaluate them and see, do you need to up-level your brand? So keep on following along. If you want some help with that branding, reach out to us at connect@prosperforpurpose.com. And until next time, keep telling your story and keep on branding for good. Thank you so much for tuning in to the Brand for Good show. If you like what you heard, please hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode and leave a review so other purpose-driven leaders can find this valuable content. To learn more about building a brand for good, please visit prosperforpurpose.com for more resources and information on all the ways you can work with us.